Yo, what's going on guys, HyperX here, welcome back to another Division video and another vendor reset video. It's the weekend, which of course means vendors, blueprints, they've all rotated, so once again I'm here to tell you guys what is for sale and whether or not any of that stuff is worth purchasing. Of course, do bear in mind with 1.4 on the horizon, a lot of stuff is going to change and a lot of stuff is not necessarily going to be that worth purchasing. So as I've said in previous episodes, unless something is absolutely outstanding, I'm going to struggle to recommend it, but regardless, I'm still going to go through the stuff you guys need to know. Also, I did say in my last 1.4 summary video that I'd be following up with slightly more in-depth videos about some of the changes. I'm going to hold that till next week because I actually want to jump into the PTS myself, experience them firsthand, and then speak about them a little bit more in depth. So expect some videos coming next week once I get hands-on with the PTS. Anyway, starting off in the Dark Zone D02, this is of course where you get your gear pieces, stamina knee pads, stamina holster, stamina gloves, and electronics gloves. Now, not going to recommend any of these, despite the fact that gloves do have their uses, because in 1.4 there will be new blueprints at new gear score levels. So for the time being, unless you are maybe playing through the game for the very first time and you just want something to grab to kind of gear up, then I'm going to say completely ignore these for now and just wait until 1.4. Moving over to D03, you have a surplus SVD, the flat 229 gear score weapon that has accurate, harmful, and decisive. Nothing particularly exciting about that one. And of course, with some of the weapon balancing coming in 1.4, then the SVD is also going to drop down a little bit. So probably not worth grabbing this one for the time being. You also have an Officer's M9A1 blueprint, a sidearm, again, not that exciting, and a first wave Vector 45 ACP, again, same principle, because when we get the new blueprints at the higher tier, then they're of course going to be a lot more applicable. One of the main complaints so far has always been that since the most recent update came out, since the gear score has been raised, the Dark Zone safe room stuff is basically redundant for the most part. So that's going to change when we have the new world tiers. There'll of course be different things available for you guys, so again, completely ignore them for the time being. Moving over to D04, this is of course where you get your gear mods. Now these are pretty safe to grab, I say this every single week. Stamina mods, electronics mods, and even when they're available, firearms as well, because they are a safe thing to have. They increase your base attribute and they're just generally speaking useful regardless. There will however be higher level versions, there'll be level 33 versions in 1.4, but regardless it's still worth having these anyway, so if you don't have them, then I would recommend picking them up. Moving over to D05, this is of course where you get your weapon mods. Again, same principle applies, there will be higher stuff available in 1.4, but these can still be of use, so if you do have a weapon that can benefit from one of these, then consider picking it up if you don't have it. These are generally speaking safer things to buy. Like, I wouldn't go around buying weapon blueprints, gear blueprints, but things like mods and gear mods, generally speaking, a little bit safer to grab. Anyway, that's a super quick look over the Dark Zone. I'm going to focus more on the base operations and stuff like that today because they're not blueprints, they're just weapons you buy outright, and they can of course have a little bit more use when compared to some of the other offerings. So, base operations, special gear vendor, top floor, he has a PX4 Storm Type T, which is actually going to get buffed in 1.4. There was a kind of weapon chart in the most recent dev blog, basically showing how some of the weapons are going to change, so it will be a little bit more in line with the X45, but it has expert and it has intense. Intense is not a great skill, so irrespective of any of the incoming changes, it's not worth picking up. And your other option is, of course, a Black Market RPK-74E with Destructive, Vicious, and Accurate. These are actually some really nice talents, and it's actually a really nice weapon. I have always been a fan of the RPK. It's just a gun that I like the feel of, I like how it behaves, and generally speaking, while at the current state of the game, it might not be the strongest, it is still a nice thing to have. And while this is at a lower gear score, this would actually be a safe thing to pick up when you kind of consider the incoming weapon changes. So if you are looking for a change of scene, or maybe you're looking for a weapon that is better than what you have, this is not a bad thing to grab. Moving on to the terminal, you have the M870 Express, which is of course one of the problem shotguns right now. This will of course be addressed in 1.4, not by changing the weapon specifically, but of course by changing the other factors that help boost the weapon. But despite that, this one doesn't have any particularly great talent on it. Commanding, Vicious, Restored, not anything worth getting excited about, so irrespective of the weapon's current kind of dominance in the Dark Zone, this is not one to grab. On top of that, you also have a Marine Super 90. This one has Accurate, Talented, Competent. Again, same story there. Really not that exciting, so let's move swiftly on. However, before we go to the underground, the other vendor this week has a performance gear mod again, and for the first time, I'm actually not going to say don't get this. See, performance gear mods, this is something I'm super excited about. It's something that I've been kind of asking the guys to do for quite some time, and they are going to be changing performance gear mods in 1.4. They're removing skill bonuses from armor, so you know, things like increased sticky bomb damage, pulse duration, support station healing, anything like that, anything that will be a skill bonus will no longer be on armor. Instead, there will be additional slots, and the idea is they will then transfer those skills onto performance gear mods. So if, for example, you have a piece of armor and say you run support station and you want to increase the support station healing, then you look for or you craft performance gear mods with those skill bonuses throw them on your gear, and that is how you put the skill bonuses on your gear. So it's going to be a really, really good system. It's something that I'm super excited about. It's something I'm really, really, really glad they did, because it's not only going to limit the RNG on the gear, means you won't have to worry about, say, getting a crappy skill bonus on, you know, the gear that you've got, but also, of course, gives you a lot more flexibility to swap things in and out depending on the roles you need to assume. So, for the first time, while again there will be level 33 performance gear mods in 1.4, you would be safe to grab this and just have it so that you can start crafting them when 1.4 drops. Don't craft anything just yet, hang on until 1.4, but having the blueprint would not actually be a bad thing. And then finally, moving into the underground, nothing especially exciting this week. You have a surplus SVD with Vicious, Talented, and Decisive, and that combination isn't particularly exciting, especially when you consider that you need to be underground rank 40 to grab this one. And as for the PP19, it has Unforgiving, Responsive, and Hurried. Now, I'm personally a pretty big fan of Responsive. I like it on SMGs, and you can definitely get some good use out of it, so you could consider picking this one up, rolling out Unforgiving for something much more suitable, and having a weapon that is not too bad. That being said, the PP19 is also undergoing some changes in 1.4. SMGs are getting hit pretty hard actually, but of course that's to bring them more in line with the rest of the game world changes. So anytime you hear that weapons are being nerfed or buffed, don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, because you need to remember that in 1.4, the entire game is going to change, NPCs are going to scale, everything else is going to change, so it doesn't necessarily mean you're suddenly going to start doing considerably less damage. It of course means that you need to factor in the fact that this needs to be brought in line with how the NPCs will behave. So for the time being, PP19 not too bad, but when you consider what's coming, probably not something I would highly recommend. So that's pretty much it for this week. Basically, general consensus for the next few weeks until we get 1.4 is things that are safe to buy, gear mods, weapon mods, and maybe the odd weapon. But besides that, I would definitely hold off buying the majority of your blueprints, because they will be changing in the not too distant future. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then a like would be super appreciated. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. But thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.